our language. And I don't know if it's easy. I don't want to share my screen because then we all get into the, right? Do you guys not want me to share the screen, or would you prefer I share it? Because then we get all
I appreciate a shared screen, and I think probably anybody who's not here on the recording, that might work better.
Unless are you gonna go, Eric, are you gonna go slide by slide? So that you can slide 12 or I don't
I
know.
do want to bounce around tonight because
Okay.
I really want to spend time going over our final and some of the concerns that, I wouldn't even say concerns, just questions that people had during the week. And I want to, like, I literally staged the PowerPoint to put like the last 8 slides going over like scenarios for the final. And then the new material I want to cover tonight is just on consulting. So that's because that was taken out of a separate mod. So there isn't that consulting mod any longer. What we're doing with Vernon Road is consulting. So I just wanted to kind of put a little bit of that back in and then just recap. I'm totally going backwards right now, but recap this past week's paper, the week 5 paper. And that's really it. Most of the time I want to open it up because this is really our last opportunity to kind of have a dialogue on any new material, but I'd like to just have that opportunity out there so you guys can ask about things this mod that you really want to have ingrained in your brain by the time you you finish next week. So that's what I really want to leave time for. And anyway, I'll jump into the shared screen. We're going to bounce around. I'll come in and out of it. I don't want to live in the PowerPoint, but so let me just bounce out of here, share my screen, and Outlook. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right. Module 6. Can you believe how fast this went by, right? Or painfully slow to some, but extremely fast for me. So this week, again, I'll do it now in real order. We're going to go over last week's activities, talk about the paper. I'm going to dive into the consultative approach. We have a few slides on that. And then we're going to talk about week 6 activities, the writing assignment, the discussion board, and the lack of, I think I pulled one of the discussion boards. I'm just going to confirm that in grades, and we're just going to leave it open for the team project discussion. So we good with that? Everybody good with that? Okay, so back to our basics first, right? Are we all comfortable on building an internal analysis, that we're comfortable looking at making that assessment based on, we can use our SWOT, our 4D, but looking at internally the organization and where there's opportunity for us, right? Have you guys identified that? We're good with that?
I think so.
All right. And judging by your assignments, yes, I know you have a pretty good handle on that, and as well as the external analysis, where then we can drag in a pest a little bit more. I think pest to give us just another layer with the external analysis, but identifying opportunities that are really out of our control, so to speak. So those are the big two. So we can identify those folks right there. We identify our internal opportunities. We identify our external areas of opportunity. Then we look and we come up with our key goals and our strategic directions. So this piece right here, when you went into, so if we looked at our 4, 5, and 6 right here, really 4 and 5, 6, you're gonna make a hypothetical analysis and your final, but 4 and 5 are really what we're looking at to show that you have a pretty good understanding of how to do a strategic plan. So you've shown to this point that you can identify the areas of opportunity, both internally and externally, the areas of weakness, and then you're going to come up with how would you solve for X, Y, and Z. So that's when we use the SWOT again, or the 4D. The 2+3 theory is you've got the 2 diagrams, but the 3 is virtually a third dimension, another layer in which to kind of peel back on. So I've read through a couple papers for the week 5, but overall, how are you guys feeling about your strategies?
I think fine. I think one thing I was going to mention just with the, and I don't know if anyone else had this challenge with the amount of questions, and I know we didn't have to answer every single question, but I think to speak to each strategy and how to implement it and, you know, cost analysis and all those things tends to be pretty robust. So I think it was a little bit tricky to fit it into sort of a more concise paper, I think.
I definitely, you know, mine was, you know, 4 pages, maybe a little bit over. So that was one of the things that it was like, oh yeah, like especially if I'm recapping some of the things that we've established in previous papers and bringing it all together. Yeah, it definitely is more lengthy. And yeah, I'm not sure how it reads, but
I was going to echo the same exact things. Mine was, I mean, I may have wrote a thesis, a doctorate paper, I'm joking a little bit, but it just felt very robust and I kind of wanted Vernon Rowe to read it. Like you kind of want to share it with them, but like, you should do some of these things.
Any other similar or different, I guess, areas of concern when you're putting your thesis together, as Hannah would say, for your strategies?
I was just going to say something. I felt very similar, Eric, when we were doing the Tivano one, when we submitted the paper right around this time about how we would change and how we would do. I think I felt very similar, and we gave them many, many options, and then to sort of streamline it to 2 was, you know, once again, you want to give it to those individuals to say, do what we suggest. So
it's like in a perfect world right here, with your teams, you're going to end up with, 7 or 8 different areas that you've identified. And then as a team, you're going to pare those down. So that little, the synthesis model is going to kick in, where you're going to really try to find where any duplicity sits or any type of redundancies. And then you can then create your master presentation based on the works of your team. So if there is a silver lining in throwing a little too much out there, it's that if you're going to go over on a paper, this is the one to go over on. This is the one that you're going to use as a competency defense, that you can say, yeah, we know about strategy. We know all about it. This guy wouldn't shut up about it for the last 7 weeks. We're good. We understand it. And by having a lot, as much as I'd love to say everybody's going to be unique, you're going to see that there's some real core principles that these folks have ignored since day one, and you guys are going to jump on them and look at those as areas of opportunity. So you'll have some redundancies within your team, but you'll also have enough of a pool to fish out of that you're not going to run out of ideas. So, but it is something that when we look at, when this was put back into the master shell, what happened originally in this 650 course is your next paper wouldn't have been, I don't know if anybody's looked ahead, wink, wink, because I know everybody has, but when you look at, on that assignment list that I submitted, I gave you guys in week 1, you'll see that this next paper that you write is a kind of a 2-pager on how you've implemented a strategic plan, how it's, has something where you personally have been affected by this. Now, previously, this was another 3 to 5 page paper summarizing your team's efforts on top of your presentation. So when I looked at that, and I think there's a little residue left, when I looked at that and started to clean it up, I said, it's just so redundant. If you're going to do a presentation with a team that you've been working on, for conceivably 6 weeks, a month and a half, and then you have to write a paper on that. And I really wanted to be careful of when you're looking at this last paper, which again is going to be, for all intents and purposes, your portfolio defense piece. And I looked at that and I could see some of the questions that were coming in throughout the week. I really wanted to be careful not, and I think I even mentioned it in one of the announcements. I'm like, don't even look at that. Don't even look at your final until you're done with week 5, because I don't want you to muddy the waters. I want you to come up with your thinking, your theory, and how you want to defend your hypothesis with these answers. And then I made the next paper just a total kind of self-summary type thing. So it allows you to put it in cruise control briefly and then jump into your final. So you're not really going to muddy up your final with anything from your next assignment. So that's why I do believe that there's a lot of variables thrown out there as scenarios, because that would have tied in a little more neatly with a longer paper for the 4th writing assignment. So less is more, I guess, but it gives you an opportunity to at least, touching on each one might trigger something for you. And I do think a lot of your teammates are going to end up having a lot of the same materials. So but anyway, that I don't think it's, I know Sandy has said before that if she wants a 3 to 5 pager and it comes out at 6, that's a bad thing. I think with the questions asked here and kind of how this is the crux of what you really need to take away from this mod of how to put these things together. It's like taking a few extra ground balls just to get in tune with the content. But it's nothing that's going to hurt you. Might not have been fun to write that extra few paragraphs, but I think it'll help you in the long run, especially as you're presenting your final. So see, I'm not in person where you guys can yell and throw things at me. So I'm telling you that remotely from the confines of my house upstairs. All right, so let's just jump into, let's see. As we're building the plan, I don't want to jump too much on, because I'm going to talk about a lot of this at the end, but when we talked with a few of you guys during the week, we looked at, and a couple of questions came in looking at the financial statement and how it actually pertains to today. We're looking at a different year. Kind of like there's been, I think like Vernon Road was in some type of like Star Trek hypersleep for the last 12 years, and we jumped in and we tried to resuscitate. But so this is blue sky, this is hypothetical, and we're looking at their income statement as if it was the last income statement received, and we're building off that. So technically we have the luxury of working in a current economy, but we're also dealing with numbers that are significantly older. So again, blue sky hypothetical, that's there for a guide to show you how to get to your 30%, okay? Or show you where you need to go to be at your 30% increase in net sales. So some of the things that we can talk about when we're looking to put these goals together are, becoming a low-cost provider of this product, which will give us maximum flexibility to compete worldwide. Right now, the case study we're working on is a small company in England with one other competitor, and in an industry where there's not a lot of new things happening. So the second strategic direction, becoming one or two in the UK, will be achieved when our strategic plan is implemented. So that's something that, when you're looking at that, again, that blue sky, do you want to just be one or two in the UK? Maybe you can make a little more money if you're global. You can hit that number easier if you're possibly virtual or doing things on a web-based situation where you have a platform, like an Amazon, that you can partner with, so you don't have to have the overhead. So those are all things that you want to figure into, because your cost of sales actually takes away from your sales revenue. So when you're putting your samples together and you're coming up with your strategies, and you say, look, yeah, I want to sell the Resurgence. I want to be the premier distributor of cloth diapers, right? Totally whacked, but let's say that's our example, cloth diapers, and we're going to sell those globally. There's a market for it now with a greener mentality of a demo that's much more green driven. So the cloth diapers are much better for the economy and for the better for the planet, and our sustainability with product is, we don't have to keep finding plastics that we have to, basically convert into diapers and so forth. So you can come up with your little lineage of things there that you think would support you going globally, and then look at, if we go to cloth versus plastic, we can make an estimate of, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. So that X amount of dollars is going to go towards your cost of sales, which is going to come off of your sales income. So if you generate $1,000 for round number sake in sales revenue, but yet the cost to produce these things is $500, then your net sales will be, anybody? I'm holding my mic. Anybody? So if it's $1,000 is your gross sales, but it costs you $500 to manufacture these particular items, what's your net sales going to be?
500.
500. So you want to look at that when you're dealing round numbers, dealing generous round numbers. You're just looking to make your point and defend your point. We're not going to take it over to Coopers and Lybrand and say, hey, can you break these numbers down for us to see if they're feasible? So this is a science class. It's theory based. So if you can prove, if you can defend your argument, then it's, we're not looking to pick it apart. We want to look for ways in which to become sustainable realistically. And I know some folks have talked about starting to make another product and using that product in the UK. So again, you want to look at, is there any type of way in which we can manufacture this product with the existing equipment that we have? Because remember, logistics, you have a shipping department, you have a sales department, you have a manufacturing team, but do you have the equipment? So maybe that's a one-time purchase for this equipment, and make up a pie in the sky number. Maybe it's going to cost you $40,000 for this machine. And how many would we have to sell to get to that 30% increase over 3 years? So those are some of the things that we're looking at for our plan. When we put our plan together at the end, when you're presenting, you're showing how to become sustainable by building your plan through strategic analysis of starting out at the internal and external levels and then kind of synthesizing that down to your strategy. And then these are just examples that I've left in there so you can see how in which you can incorporate these things if you want. So are you guys good on this? You following it?
We're
think
basically
so.
just getting together with our partners and saying, here's what all three of us talked about. Let's hash out which ones we think are the best and present those.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about that with consulting tonight of how the approach works. Unified front where, let's say, it's Rebecca, me, and Sal on a team that are presenting to a client, and Rebecca and Sal have this great idea, and I'm like, I'm not sold on it. I'm not crazy about it, but they've been working on a different aspect of the project with the consulting team. I can say that all day long in the confidence of Rebecca and Sal. But the moment that door opens and we talk to the client, it's a unified front where, yep, 100% on board. This is the plan. This is what we're going with. So as a team, you're going to come up with your plans, and I'm sure you're going to be much more cordial and amicable towards each other on what you think will work. But yeah, you're going to basically make the all-star team of your plan, of your teammates' plans, what you think will work best and how you'll get to that 30%. And again, I'm not looking for like a dissertation on the virtues of the income statement. We're just using that as a baseline for numbers to show us where we need to be. So you can make.
Yeah, I didn't mention like actual numbers. Is that fine?
For your final, you're gonna have to mention actual numbers.
Okay, because yeah, I had just talked about percentages, but then I looked at the administrative costs and saw like how that could potentially be reconfigured to pay for some of the things that I was proposing. So is that okay that I didn't use like the actual dollar figures or anything in my portfolio piece?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. In the portfolio piece, it's fine because you're still identifying your strategy and showing how you're not presenting to the client, which is what your final is.
Okay.
You are showing how you came to the realization that these clowns administratively are top heavy, they're paying way too much up front, and their back end and bottom line are suffering for it. So and that you can easily show with a percentage, or you can make that's you don't have a crystal ball that I know of, but you can't predict what's going to happen, but you can make an assessment based on the research that you've done to show that, if we can cut this cost up here, we can then take the money saved there and increase production, which will yield more product being put out, which will then increase our return. And so it's kind of that domino effect. You're going to have to show at some point where it's coming from. And then as you present for your final, you're going to show that you're gonna kind of put a numeric value on things to show how we got to that 30%, or how we will get 30%.
Eric, I do have a question. I don't know if it's kind of unrelated, but is there any opportunity to like revise our paper that's for our portfolio piece? Like if we really missed the mark or something, or there was a big piece missing, or is it just like, nope, you get one shot and then I guess.
No,
I-
as
okay.
with any paper, Rebecca, as with anything if you want to redo anything, I just need it before the 18th. But
Okay.
I haven't seen that yet, and I haven't read it, but I don't want, again, when they review your portfolio piece, they don't really look at anybody that reads it isn't really anybody versed in strategic analytics. These are folks that are going to read a paper and look at the structure and then compare that to the outcome and look at your little introductory statement that's affixed to the assignment. So
Mhm.
they're not going to go through and say, oh, wait a minute, she didn't tell me that, that that if we took X amount of dollar, they're not
She
going to.
didn't mention the income statement. Yeah.
Yes. Now, it's not, so whatever you're comfortable with, but either way, it's not the pieces to show that you have a mastery of how to put this plan together. It's not really looking at the X's and O's yet. It's looking at theory behind it. And then at the final, that's our X's and O's paper, or our X's and O's presentation, formally a paper and
But
present.
that doesn't actually go into the portfolio, does it?
Your final does not, no.
Okay. And when you say final, you mean the paper and the presentation, right?
The final is just the PowerPoint.
Okay.
The submission. So that goes in your academic file, but it's not part of your portfolio whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So is everybody feeling better about that? I mean, or is everybody worked up about like, I know there are a lot of variables, but I just want to make sure you're comfortable before we start covering new stuff or going back to last week's stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca asked a couple of the questions I was wondering about in regards to the portfolio piece. And I remember, I forget if it was you or maybe it was Sandy early on had talked about, like, one of the reviewers had graded off the paper, not off of the like assessment of the paper when it came to the portfolio. So Rebecca sort of covered some of the stuff I was thinking. It goes back to what Maria said earlier of just like, part of it, I appreciated trying to be more concise to keep it kind of in that 2 to 3-ish window. But it also, like, I just had that constant, like, shoot, I hope I'm not leaving out something else that I should be like delving deeper into. So it's fine. It'll all just be fine.
To Cynthia's argument last week with our, the Tivana versus Vernon Road, I really think there's so much material and there's so much missed opportunity with Vernon Road that we see in a little 30-minute video or whatever, how long it is,
Yeah.
that you're going to be like, oh, I could have done this. I could have done that. And that's where, I mean, personally, I see that as like, wow, you guys really caught on. You understand, you see these opportunities. So these are things that you can't, they're kind of innate. You really can't, shake someone and say, hey, do you see that, Richard doesn't talk to his staff? These are things that you picked up on. So
Remember this when you're grading my paper.
I have a great memory. My whole goal for the semester, for the end of the mod at least, is to get Cynthia on board with Vernon Road and not.
How's he doing, Cynthia? Are you anywhere near?
I don't know. I mean, it's not so much the Vernon Rhodes thing. It's the whole English accents. And Richard and Henry are asses. I'm sorry. Yeah. But Eric, I have a question. So as you are aware of that, Stephen is due to he's also teaching the same night that we have to do presentations. So obviously we have to pre-record our presentation in order to include Stephen, unless for some reason that Stephen has to do his own portion on his own, but I doubt that very seriously. But when we pre-record ours, is it that just Stephen is just submitting it to you, or is that how that'll work?
So, I talked to Stephen yesterday. So do you think, because obviously Rebecca's not flying out from Iowa to do her presentation either, so, but like, if you wanted to do them, I mean, we could always slide Stevens in, we could convert it over to a YouTube video and if you wanted to get together and record yours together, and we put it on a YouTube and upload it and show it in class. The one thing I mentioned is that you have to be somebody on your team, preferably everybody, but we know that's not possible, needs to be available to answer questions because you're presenting to a board, essentially. We serve as a board for this particular event. So Stephen's part's in there. We can have him, afterwards we can put questions in the chat. I mean, there's a number of ways we can do it, but um, just so it's fair to the rest of the team where, I think ideally you record it together and then we'll just upload it and show it the night of the final. Does that work for you guys?
Nope, that's fine. I just want to make sure, to confirm that. And that means that, and just only Stephen, well, whoever our leader is to submit the video, correct, to you?
Actually, everybody will submit, well, the video, yes. The
Okay.
PowerPoint, everybody submits.
Okay,
We'll probably have a video too, Eric. I don't know what Caroline, I think she actually also had like maybe an appointment or something coming up. So
Yeah,
we might be recording ours too.
something coming up on Monday. So, but she had messaged me yesterday, I think, I chatted with her. I never see her in the building, but she's on the floor below us, but we'll figure it out. And it's really, if this was 2 years ago and we talked about virtually doing a presentation, be like, oh my God, what do we do? All this, but it's so like second nature for us now that we just, we'll convert it. Like I said, you do your recording, ship it over to me. I'll convert it to a YouTube video and we'll just play it that night and we'll have it in the Zoom window and it'll play. So the folks at home and the folks in school, in the classroom can watch it and comment on it. That's all. You get to polish it up and you can get the better lighting, and like you can really go Hollywood with this.
Oh, we plan to.
Any other questions before we start talking about last week? And we are, again, if something comes up, don't worry, because once we fly through consulting, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about the final again, and just make sure that you're comfortable and that there's no other questions, because you're going to have questions the moment we get off tonight. Like that minute we disconnect, you'll have some questions pop in your head, but because you're all overachievers. But that's a good thing. All right, so let's see. All right, our week 5, should organizations consider their business strategy as a static annual event or a tool that should continually change over time, using resources to validate your position? Consider the frequency by which strategy should be revised. So this is kind of like a softball, because I've been saying since day one, what my stance is on this, and how as an organization personally, we really were able to survive during a pandemic based on the things that we had done from a planning perspective. So we'll take 2 comments before we jump into the writing assignment. So who has some comments on this? What do you guys think, static or a living doc?
I think a living doc, but in my kind of research, and I wrote it in my post, one thing I had read talked about like kind of keeping the foundation of it core and then adjusting sort of I wrote it better. I can't come up with the words, but like adjusting in other ways. So like not having everything change all the time. And then Caroline actually talked about like the frequency of change, and is there a point where there's too much and people not like kind of building trust in the plan. So I thought it was interesting. Like, I think it changes. That is my end, like my final answer. But I do think there are some components to take into consideration when you do the changes.
Yes, I agree with Kate. And to add to that, I think, and this is something I always say when I'm talking to people about performance too, I feel like you need to allow a reasonable amount of time for the changes to be implemented. So you can't just, have a week and say, oh, okay, all right, well, that's not working. Let's do this. Let's change our mind. So I think it has to be some sort of a balance where you provide, you keep sort of your head on a swivel, but you allow the changes to be fleshed out in a reasonable amount of time before you decide that whether they are or aren't working.
I was just going to say, obviously everybody has really great points. I wrote in my post that I think it's a living piece. I don't think it can be static, But to me, it's also a leader needs to be visionary to think about that. I think we've all saw during the pandemic, some organizations and some companies that just, they sort of just held on too long, like they waited too long to have it be changing, and where are they now? So having leadership and having a board and stakeholders who are advocate for pieces that are not going great and having to move them and be able to be flexible and not be static, I think is very important.
One of the things, and you all made excellent points, because you're not, some organizations have incorporated a strategic, like an analyst, basically somebody that's sole responsibility is to continue to put these plans and revise these plans. And in some situations that I've run into personally is these folks look to justify their existence on a structure, on an organizational chart. So they'll continually try to implement change, and they'll give things a small window to try to evolve. And when it doesn't happen, they want to, move on and come up with a more, streamlined approach and kind of go back and do a little reinventing. And a lot of times what you'll see is that you go full circle, because there's only so many ways in which you can reinvent a particular situation or item. And so you are going to start seeing redundancies, and you're going to start seeing some overlap. But no, it's a valid point where if you're static, you're toast. And with a living doc, you've got to give it like these incremental blocks to stagger and build on, because you can't just go 6 weeks out on everything and say, for example, I can measure retention based on census, which is who establishes attendance when by the first 3 weeks of class. So I can come up with a really good number and strategy based on data I collected on week 4. But if I say, okay, so everything we do to analyze our strategic plan for enrollment management is going to be on a 4-week cycle, then I'm going to miss a lot of opportunity to analyze information that takes a lot longer, than 4 to 5 weeks to evolve. So I'm always going to be cutting that off before it can mature, and I'm not seeing the true trajectory, of a lot of items that are on a strategic plan. Some of the strategies, again, they're not going to happen overnight. So most companies look at a strategic plan, and they'll if they have a living doc, they'll look at it for either the beginning of quarter 4, or if it aligns with a fiscal year, maybe they'll look at it in July. But there's so many moving parts. You can't put a timeline on you can't put one specific timeline in there. You just can't keep, flipping the switch when you think it's not working. So, but excellent points. And I'm through some of the boards now. And so I'll have all that stuff wrapped up by the end of the week. So any other questions on that? Again, that was something that we've talked about, but it's a real important piece that when you leave here, another kind of, metaphorical bullet in your holster that you have to work with when you're looking to develop and, ultimately revise these plans. We good? All right, our writing assignment, which caused a lot of folks some sleepless nights because of the high pressure situation of your portfolio. And you guys are all going to be grading your portfolio. So because you've been coached from week 1 of your program to say, hey, heads up, this is coming. And a lot of universities kind of spring it on you as a separate mod or semester and say, okay, here you go find this stuff now. So they have to do a scavenger hunt for the last, 18 months of a program. You guys are kind of doing it in real time. So I know for your data, you've already got that assignment put aside for strategy. It's going to be this one. So the question is research organizational culture and discuss the common attributes of high performing cultures. How would you describe VN's current culture with the implementation of the 2 strategies? What, if any, impact would they have on the current culture? And the overwhelming response I've seen has been that there's just there's a big void, and there's a big void in trust, there's a big void in leadership, there's a big void in vision. So I'm sure I'll be seeing these in your finals, but anybody want to chime in on the pain points of last week?
I'm just gonna say this, it's funny because you keep saying like portfolio. And I think I'll just speak for myself, is that as soon as I hear the word portfolio, my brain stops working, like to write the paper. So I think that this took me longer, but once I got into it, it was kind of interesting to I actually appreciated, even though there was a lot of questions, to sort of frame my thoughts on what I wanted Vernon Road to kind of come out of from the environmental analysis. So I do appreciate all of the questions, because I think that my brain got crazy because I heard the word portfolio. So the questions helped me guide my own conversation. I will agree with Cynthia. I started to hate Vernon Road on like Thursday afternoon. I had not hated them, and I really started to hate them because I watched the video again, and I was like, oh, like that. I think there's if they were still in business, I think there could be some really great opportunities for them to grow and to change I talked a lot about a rebranding and celebrating their 100+ years, because companies have done that, and in my research. So I thought that could be a very interesting model for them to go down.
Do you think, Hannah, if let's say the Brinks truck dropped a case of money on our front yard, $1 million,
So exciting.
right? So if you had an opportunity to go and buy this company, would you do it?
Well, if I could have everybody's strategic paper, probably, right? Because
It
my
depends
whole
on how
group,
much of a challenge you like, Hannah, I think.
right? Yeah, because my whole group, I know, has some really interesting ways that they would say this. My family owned a business for years, and I thought about this as I was writing this plan. There was obviously struggles with employee engagement, with making sure you turned a profit, way to make sure your stakeholders were involved, blah, 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 all of those pieces. I don't know enough about textiles. I did a lot of research on textiles though, and the history regarding rebranding, but it could be interesting to rebrand them and have some different leadership and some really great performance management data points to see how they could be successful for the future.
So
I feel like I didn't answer your question. I just gave you like a political answer. So.
no, but I think, and I asked that question because of the enthusiasm I've seen in a lot of the discussion posts and in the papers, both the internal, external evaluations. We'll go back to Schultz and Tivana and Starbucks, right? That you guys have done more research. And like you said, Hannah, you don't know much about the textile industry. What did the Chapins know about the textile industry before they jumped into it? So that's why I think where I don't know anything about the textile industry, but if I had that kind of money to invest with the homework I've done in the industry, I'm confident enough that I could go in there and do a better job. Well, let's face it. I think the two guys that sat in the balcony of the Muppets could do a better job than these guys did for running this place. But I think I could actually make that place profitable. I could definitely make the employees a lot happier and engaged, and happy and engaged employees are, they produce, they're more of team, they're more team players and so forth. But that's the question I've always kind of kept in the back of my head is would I buy this company? Would I do what those guys did, buy it out of bankruptcy, knowing what I know now, and the passion and enthusiasm that you guys have written about for the last few weeks? I think that's kind of a fair question to ask if you're that confident in your abilities. So who is that confident in their abilities to go and buy Vernon Road?
I just wouldn't have the energy for it, honestly. It's a huge uphill battle. Not to say that I feel like I have the abilities, because I think that there's certainly a lot of things that could change, and I don't think that they would necessarily be completely drastically different, but I think it would take a while to get the employees on board to really kind of push that huge boulder up the hill. So.
Fair point, because the trust factor's in the tank right now. So new owners, they're going to look at as people that are just coming in to try to make a buck. And so, but I mean, personally, I think I would like that. I would like to go up there and let these folks know that we appreciate them. They have a future, and that we have big plans for this organization, because they haven't heard that. So, I don't know. I just, that's like, there's just a lot of opportunity, and that's why I do like this case study. I wouldn't buy a Starbucks if my life depended on it, but or a Tivana for that matter. But because we're really not, it's like they're a dime a dozen. This is one of two places in the UK that's doing this, and there's, they didn't. I don't think they really appreciated the history or the culture. So. I ramble on, I apologize, but I do think it's something to consider as you're writing and presenting your final, because your whole goal is to save this place. That's your goal. Or again, I'm being, maybe presumptuous, for then you could say, you know what, no matter what we do, these clowns aren't going to get to that 30% mark. So let's just cut our losses. But you really got to show that and defend that a lot more than you would trying to make up a hypothetical number to say, yeah, we sell X amount of blouses to the local school department for school uniforms. In 3 years, we'll hit incrementally, we'll do this, this, and this. So any other questions or comments on last week's paper? I will tell you, I say portfolio a lot, and I don't want you to go into a different space when you hear portfolio, because the hardest part of the whole portfolio process, and I am not being facetious, the hardest part is finding the assignment that you want to show that competency. And then you write a one-pager, a little introduction to say, this is how. And you don't even have to worry about me writing nasty comments about your pronouns or anything. You can go in there and write, I think it's a total opinion piece of how you meet the competency based on the paper you wrote, because Vernon Rhodes' culture was in the tank. And, it's a page. It's like a glorified discussion post that you write about something that you've already written months or a year earlier. So don't go in that dark space, because the portfolio, when done right, which is the way you guys are doing it, when done right, is a cakewalk. You're just showing that you understand and that you have a proficient level of knowledge in each specific competency. So that's all. And they don't look at your grades. They don't look at your attendance. They just look at that introductory statement that you make. They align it with the paper. They don't review the paper. They may read it, but they're not going to use it as the tool in which they decide if you're proficient, if you have a master proficiency, standard proficiency, if you're not proficient in it. There's 3 boxes that they can check. And I believe you've got to score at least 4 masters and 2 proficients of your competencies. So I'm not downplaying it. I'm just telling you, don't stress out about these portfolios, because you're already doing the hardest part. And putting that little summary together and identifying the assignment are 3 times as hard as it is to actually put the assignment together. Because especially I'm hoping other adjuncts and professors do this, just let you guys know which one is which one really aligns with that competency? Which one in the syllabus is going to really be the one that shows that you know what you're talking about? So is anybody else more at ease now for that? Or I know it's something that seems like it's hanging over your head in the next few months coming up. So don't worry. I mean, like only 70% of the people don't pass, but you're in that good 30%, I think, that are, I'm totally joking. Okay, so let's jump into consultants. All right. Consultants are, for lack of a better term, they're kind of the brains of the operation that come in, and we'll use this very tired metaphor again, but again, the four sides of the house, where as a consultant, you're going to look at all four sides. Or typically folks that are running an organization, although they might have a broader view, they're looking at it from their perspective. So, which can be jaded. And if we go back to the Chapins, where they came into a manufacturing site because they ran a manufacturing facility previously. Well, we saw how that ended. So, and we also saw how it ended with Jerry, the consultant that was handed to them. So as a consultant, you're just giving them an objective perspective. So you're doing your research, you're getting in the weeds, you're doing exactly what you've been doing now for the last few weeks, looking at your external, internal analysis, you're doing your SWOT, you're looking for your opportunities, you're looking against your threats. And you're going to come up with basically a best practices model of what's going to work for this organization. Now, a lot of the organizations that will bring in consultants are larger organizations that are structurally, tiered. So, for example, if a consultant came into Goodwin University, they really wouldn't get the same. If you talk to all faculty, or if you talk to all academics, or if you talk to all administrative, or if you talk to all operational, you probably have three different perspectives of what's going on at the school. So as a consultant, you're really looking, when you're with a large corporation, you're not necessarily looking to solve for keeping the doors open. You're looking to solve for that particular area's needs. It could be they bring in an enrollment consultant that looks to work with the admissions team to better process applications when they come in. So there's obviously different levels of consultants and different team sizes. One of the projects that the university worked on in the past for a consulting project was Boys State and Girls State. They're the scholarships for the oh my gosh, it's scholarship for it's like almost like a boot camp for kids that want to go into public service. Is it Boys Town and Girls Town? I mean, I know it's like it's a camp that a lot of like Congressman Larson and others have gone to. It's been around forever. So there was a fundraising arm that just offered scholarships, but they weren't recruiting they weren't recruiting any of the high schools for kids that wanted to go into to go into Boys Town, or even doing public service. So they created a model in which the consulting firm created a model using Access, because they were working on a shoestring budget, and Access was the least expensive software that could be used as a tracking device or proactive and reactive tool to reach out, to store data, to store phone numbers, email addresses, birth dates. So they would have these proactive messaging going out to prospective students that they met at college fairs and so forth, to say, hey, summer scholarship period starts here. This is you're a senior at X high school. So if you're interested, please let me know. So they really were trying to make the connection to Boise State by offering these scholarships and part of the selection committee. But what seemed like a pretty good process that this organization had was actually completely useless, because they weren't collecting any data to reach out. And it really just took a consultant that had somewhat of a data background to say, hey, time out. You have a great relationship with this organization, but you're not making the connection to the audience to get them to this organization. So anyway, consultants aren't always going to be like, you don't have to be versed in every aspect of it. So if we had a consulting team for leadership, and we were looking to put together a project, let's say with Hasbro, that they're looking to consolidate their operations. So we would take a couple of folks that had a strong strategy background, a couple of folks maybe from a data perspective, a couple of folks from a communications aspect that could kind of be the eyes, the voice and the face of the operation. So we would put together a team based on strengths within our collective internal department. So, and everybody could really work on an area which they were somewhat of an expert on. And instead of trying to have somebody that's an expert in everything. So that's the ideal consultant isn't somebody that knows everything. It's a consultant, and again, scale wise, you might have an educational consultant has a working relationship with different colleges and universities to help students get placed and matriculate on. Well, they don't need as vast of a network as somebody that was working with a larger school or larger corporation, that you can kind of pick 4 or 5 individuals based on strengths that could form a team that could then give a more well-rounded perspective of how it will affect Hasbro globally to make this type of change based on, again, the data we collect, based on the internal, external, environmental analysis, things that maybe somebody who has a strength in communications doesn't have that strength. So that's why it's really good to put these teams together based on, have you guys taken the Enneagrams yet? So a lot of folks will look at, okay, we need a couple of 1s. We need a 7, at least 1 7. We need some 5s to keep us grounded. So they'll look at your Enneagram chart and help put together a team based on that and compatibility of wings. So if I'm a 1 with a 7 wing. So we're going to find people that work well with me. And then we just kind of build our model based on compatibility and knowledge. So and we talk about why would an organization use a consultant? Well, some of them just don't. Go back to the Chapins, they do not have industry knowledge. So I'll ask you, did the consultant they brought in have industry knowledge? No.
No.
The consultant did not have industry knowledge. So did the consultant have organizational knowledge?
Not really.
Not specific to textile, but as far as enough of a leadership. So essentially, the biggest deficiency with Vernon Road, this consultant was able to identify. And I know Rebecca, I know he was smug and probably had his scarf on in the car when he left, but
That was good.
and I can see that. I can definitely see that. But it was like such an odd couple where they couldn't see what was obviously lacking in front of them. And this guy saw it like, you or I are looking at each other on the screen right now. I mean, crystal clear. But there was, from a delivery perspective, it didn't work. Now, I'll use a hypothetical. Let's say as we present next week, we've got the Chapins to come in for a special screening of our top shelf consulting presentations. And they don't get that, and Cynthia will like this, they don't get that wise guy, English accent, jolly-o, good day chap type of approach. They get us talking to these folks to say, just regular people talking to them like, you know what, if you did this, that might work. That would probably have ended more successfully than the conversation with the guy that brought Coke to Europe. Because I just don't think I think from the day one, the first meeting, there was that animosity of, why is he here? We know what we're doing. We don't need to hear from this guy. So now you get a different messenger and who knows what happens. Because these folks, again, they weren't paying for Jerry. I'm sure Jerry costs a pretty penny. Consultants make decent money. But why? They didn't want to put the time and energy in to have a consultant that was going to tell them bad things, and I think even if he was going to tell them good things, like, hey, you know what, your shipping department is awesome, every order in is out, no problems, no lost packages. He didn't want to hear that. Well, they didn't want to hear that, and he wasn't going to say that. So you get that. You have to really, and as I said, we're assembling our team. So let's say that we have Sal. We determined Sal's going to be our communications person, our spokesperson, right? So Sal shows up to the first consulting meeting, wearing his Red Sox hat and sitting down, and the team, we're all huddled in another room down the hall, waiting to hear how it goes with Sal. And whoever, the principal could come out and say, yeah, I just don't connect with this person. It's not a connection. So at that point, what do?
Put them in a room and have them duke it out
We
with Enneagram results.
Okay, yeah, we'll promote the bout as the 1 versus the 4. So we talked about how we put this team together based on area of expertise, right? So we'll say at that point, we reconvene as a group without the principal. We reconvene as a group and say, you know what, who's going to relate better to this individual? And I don't know if we'll have the privy of having that Enneagram ahead of time, but we are going to look at them and say, okay, who amongst us is going to relate to this individual right here? And we find that other person that will slide in, and we're being amicable because they need us, or they need advice, they need information. They didn't bring us in because they want to drop some money and look to just spend and have lunch and expense that. They brought us in because they have a real problem that needs to be solved. And our first swing with Sal, who we deemed our communications expert, who's going to be that point person, just there was no, the guy's like, hey, I'm a diehard Yankee fan. Anybody who wears a Red Sox hat here is out, whatever. So it could be a million reasons that why they don't want to, didn't make the connection with Sal. So we send our next person over and we restructure internally, and we reassign responsibilities of how we're going to handle things. But it's that duck metaphor where, you see a duck cruising on the water, it looks like silk, right? It's just barely cutting the stream, right? And then if you could see underneath, you realize that those paddles are just going a mile a minute. So, and we want to be that way, where we're on the outside. Yeah, we're collected and we understand what the principal needs, but we're also going to have to restructure on the fly internally to come up with a new plan, or to modify our plan of how we're going to research and promote the, the things which that they're looking for, the things in which they're looking to solve for. So now, in a lot of the cases, especially when we just touched on it earlier too, where we look at week 5. Week 5 is when we have that meeting with, again, week 5 metaphorically that's when our big paper was due. So we talk about theory, but we're not looking to implement right now. So implementation might be something that's staggered. It might be something that is a year down the road. So we may not be involved in that aspect of the decision. And I can tell you with the university's relationship with Boys Town, they were not involved with the implementation piece. They were up to the recommendations because we're fellow nonprofits. But so, and that was, I think that agreement came from both parties because of the amount of time it was going to take to incorporate certain things, being trained on or uploading access, getting trained on it, and all the little nuances that go into, the data they're going to collect, how they're going to get it, the forms they're going to develop. So we knew that was going to be, a good 9 to 12 months out. So it kind of goes against the grain of our strategic analysis, because what do we want to do? What's the most important thing to do after we run our first pilot?
Evaluate it.
Back and
Evaluate.
adjust.
Yep. We take a step back, we look at it, we say, okay, this is what we have. How are we going to make this? Are we going to massage this to make it, fit exactly where we want it to fit? Now, if we don't get the results for a year, which, even if, let's say it's 6 months, a lot can happen in 6 months. So it's tough to be I guess, to deliver that type of strategy and stay on top of it. You'd really want to have pilots so they can start implementing these pilots, but you're not going to go full-blown implementation immediately. So you start looking at these, you have them submit to you, or you still stay on board, because again, we're pricey, we're not there for free. So we will then look at, maybe we're just going to dedicate 3 hours a week to just authenticating their data and looking at certain aspects of implementation. And then we have a 6-month revisit where we can say, okay, this is what we're seeing as a trend. This is what we would recommend. So we kind of evolve our strategy based on some of the pilots that they've launched. So as Rebecca said, we take a step back, we look at it, and then we make that assessment. So and if we're not in the implementation, it's not the end of the world, because we, unlike our hypothetical purchase of Vernon Road, we're not rolling up our sleeves and getting in there and helping them restructure and, retrain individuals. We're telling them they're paying for our brain, not our brawn. We're telling them what we need to get to our goal, and it's up to them to implement it. And a lot of organizations that use this really don't have the bandwidth or the infrastructure to take a step back and make that assessment. So that's why it's important for us to assemble, and it's rarely again a one-person team that goes in and does this. So I really liked the consulting mod that the university used to have, and then this program had it up until, I think, maybe last mod or the mod before. But it is a good opportunity to get some real world experience. So don't be afraid to hang that shingle outside your door if you want to get some, just do some per diem work to consult. And it's something that, based on the things that you're learning throughout the program, selfishly, I'll say the strategy and the data components could carry you through as a consultant, but you need that communication piece as well. but I do think it's an excellent opportunity for a lot of students coming out of the program just to, to help. And I know with working at a nonprofit, and I actually sit on a board of another nonprofit. It's an anti-bullying nonprofit set up by some retired boxers, professional boxers. And I grew up with a couple of these guys. We hung out. We been, we grew up boxing together. So there is the issue is for me is that, well, we've got you on the board, so we really don't need to bring in an outsider. We can put this strategy together. I'm like, yeah, but again, the tired old metaphor. Like, I'm seeing one side of this house. I need to see all four. We need somebody from the outside to take a look at it, say, hey, what's going on here? So that's where it really helps to have that perspective. And with the nonprofits, they don't have the budget to fund a lot of these consultants. They can't certainly afford like the biggies that are out there that will come in and their first visit alone is like a couple grand just to talk to you, and they might not even take on your case. It's just I'll say it's like who's seen Elf here? Everybody's seen Elf? When they don't have the story. Remember, they can't come up with a story, so they call in Miles, and so Miles is gonna like sell them the pitch, stuff like that. I mean, at the end of the day, after Miles storms out, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, but he leaves his little notebook behind, and all his ideas were ideas that they already had, but they didn't sound good until they came from another person. So consulting is a very fickle field, but it's something that if you come off with a level of authority and you're thorough and detailed and you can document your evidence, it's a very, very, very needed arena to participate in. And had we had two examples of Richard and his father, of folks that came in, bought an organization out of bankruptcy and turned it around into a Fortune 1000 company, whatever, we could then make the argument that, all right, well then maybe Richard steps back and goes around and consults other manufacturing firms as to how to streamline their process and how to get their people on board. So there's your 180, which way it could have gone. But that's it. The folks that make the best consultants are also the folks that came from industry and have a pretty good, I guess, kind of a perception of how certain industry works, where I don't know if I'd be a decent consultant working on a manufacturing floor because I don't have a lot of experience in the manufacturing realm, but like my end is higher ed. But if I'm partnered up with somebody that has that manufacturing background, then you're kind of leaning on each other, and there's strength in numbers and relying on their expertise. And then so again, it's a pretty interesting dynamic, but consultants are it's an area that's now post-pandemic, as we transition, hopefully post-pandemic, you're seeing more and more of them needed because of folks that have had to reinvent the process of what they're doing. And now they've got that core process. They want to then take that to the next step and they want to evolve it. And that's where the consultants can come in to help them out. So let's see what else we got here. The consultative role. So kind of a rehash here, but it's a good fit. So interpersonally, again, maybe Sal wearing a Red Sox hat wasn't the best move on our part to send in to meet with the person, but because we found out later, we looked, he's got Jeter stuff all over his office. He's a huge Yankee fan. So then we find another person on the team that we think is going to be a good fit. And you're not walking in there to be the savior, you're making suggestions. So you're not, if we're going back to our Vernon Road folks, you're not going to tell them that, yeah, if you want to save a significant amount of money, you probably should start dumping your chemical dyes in the Thames River, so you don't have to pay these exorbitant amount of these fees that the government's charging you to get rid of toxins. You know, I mean, you just want to be ethical with your approach, because we know, and you know, I'm sure we've all seen it, where there's dump trucks full of debris on the side of the road somewhere where it's just illegal dumping, but it's certainly a lot cheaper than having to pay for that. And it's a way to save, you know, $20,000 to $30,000 a year in disposal expenses, but it's not ethical. So the presentation and the consultative process should align with their organizational environment, their values, what they're looking to do. You're not there to continue to do things as usual. You're there to kind of develop some type of change agent for them to take the reins and run with, where it's not going to you know, just start from scratch. It's going to be somewhat seamless. And the other piece about the consultative process is it requires an extreme amount. Well, you're dealing with a lot of proprietary information, which could be harmful if it gets out. And there's a lot of non-competes where if you're consulting for this, let's say they were consulting for the Hoffman Auto Group, that there would be a non-compete where they couldn't, you know, they couldn't consult for the Bertera Auto Group because it would be a conflict of interest, where you're trying to advise both clients of how to compete with each other. So there's a lot of non-competes, a lot of proprietary documentation that you're going to have you're going to be privy to. So you want to be extremely confidential and discreet about the information that's presented to you. So it's not, most of what you'll see is not for public consumption. So some of the roles that you'll see, some of the roles in which the consultant will have to kind of morph into is a high involvement method. And the high involvement method is something in which you're, you know, not at the where the principal rings a bell and you come running over, but you need to be in a constant mode of communication with this person via text, email, phone. But it's something that the groups that you will be working with as a consultant, you have to become very accessible. And that's why if you have a team that's there, you have individuals assigned to these folks, because it's not feasible to think that our point person, again, we will say Sal, our point person is then not going to be able to meet with the manufacturing arm. He's not going to be able to meet with the logistics team. He's not going to be able to meet with the, you know, production or assembly. So you have key folks that can have that level of involvement, that can competently report back to the group. So it's very reliant. I guess reliant is a good word, but you know, the analogy of the chain, the strongest chain in the world is only as strong as its weakest link. So as you assemble that team, you really want to make sure that you've got folks that are on point, that are certainly pulling on the rope in the same direction as you, that really want to be on this team. You don't want to have somebody on the team, like, again, going back to Sal, if we tell Sal, hey, Sal, this guy doesn't want to talk to you because you're a Red Sox fan, but you're going to take over, let's have you deal with the manufacturing folks. Well, I don't want to deal with the manufacturing folks. I want to be the communications person. So you're not just going to put somebody onto another role to appease them. You're really looking to emphasize their strengths. So at this point, we might say, you know what, Sal, this is not going to work for you from a communication standpoint. We're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to find somebody within the organization that we can bring into this, bring into the fold and get them up to speed. Or we're going to take Rebecca. Rebecca's going to come over and become that point person now. So you don't just drop somebody into a role because they're part of the team. At that point, you really have to take a step back and reevaluate your team and say, okay, this is my deficiency right now, or I need another point person. But if I'm taking internally and I'm sliding Rebecca over to that point person, then I need somebody to slide into Rebecca's role. And maybe I don't have that strength. That's where I bring in that other person to fill that void. So I'm still getting that high touch with all these different areas that we're working with. And then you want to help the initial strategy, position management to identify and continue strategy formulation implementation. So basically fancy words for saying you taught them with the training wheels on, you take the training wheels off, and you make sure that the things that were happening while you were there, if you were part of the implementation process, continue on. And if not, how you're going to have that high touch involvement where you can then go back and say, look, we kind of skipped this step here. Let's go back and reevaluate. And maybe that's what we have to incorporate going forward. But it's not when you sign off and say, okay, here's my recommendations, you're not done. Typically there's follow-up for any pilot period they launched. There's going to be staggered meetings for 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. So it's not a one and done opportunity. It's a way in which to develop that relationship. And again, working for a larger organization or consulting for a larger organization, then you might find that, well, they really liked you down in logistics. So we'd like to have you take a look at our, the manufacturing arm of it to see how we can maybe streamline that, develop an engagement level that we feel is, comparable to the engagement level of the team we just helped remodel. So it's really a kind of like if you were to buy a car, right? You're probably going to go back. If you go back for service in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, maybe after the second or third time, you're there in the showroom having your coffee, waiting for your car to be serviced, and you realize that the person that sold me this car is not here any longer. But when you go back to pick up your car, the person that signed you in, maybe the person that changed your oil, or the service manager, are typically the same person because they're part of the sustainability model. You'll go back to a dealership to buy a car based on the way, not necessarily the way you were treated when you bought it, but the way you were treated when you serviced it, and how frequently and how infrequently, that it needed service or didn't need service, and how your experience was there. So when you're looking at a consultant, you are having that opportunity to service that customer and that organization. And then for any other opportunities, they're happy to recommend you based on their experience because you've done right by them. So it's an opportunity to network within an organization. If you're just consulting for one particular area of a large organization, then it's an opportunity to slide down into other organizational areas based on the performance that you've had and the relationship that you've had with the principal for the initial job that you had. So it's some networking involved, but it's a results-based university. It's a results-based universe that everybody looks at how it worked out. And it's, it is relationship driven. So you can be the best consultant in the world, but if you have a nasty attitude, it might be a one and done where they really want to pick your brain, but they don't want to partner with you long term. So I don't know what else I have left on consulting here. Let me take a peek. From, I guess, breaking and finding that client, we look at facilitation. we are there. Not, you know, like when we bought Vernon Road, hypothetically, we're not there to roll up our sleeves. We're there to tell the client what needs to be done. This is really what has to be done. And it's very common that you're not going to be working with the right people. So like if I was working on a data strategy project right now, I'd want to work with a data analyst. But because a data analyst might be, you know, a salary grade 27, the person, the salary grade 30, who's the supervisor for that position, will want to be in on the meeting. So it's like, okay, well, great. I appreciate that you're the supervisor, but we really need to have this individual that this individual has the information that we need. So did I just lose you guys? Okay.
No.
I thought my screen just like whited out for a second. So anyway, make sure you're working with the right people. And you know, that old expression, like you can't fix crazy. I think the comedian Ron White says it, like you can't, something like that. You can't fix crazy. But if you go in there and it's just totally unstable environment, then as one of my very, very, very great coaches told me as a young kid, is that a fish rots from the head. So if you have a horrible management team, you're probably going to have a messed up staff and so forth. So you have to cut your losses at that point and realize that, you know what, this is just, you know, I don't think you could have, Jerry is a great example, right? Great consultant, walks in, makes the recommendations, and they're telling them, you don't know what you're talking about. So, and you want to get involved with your follow-up. You want to make sure that you are basically tracking what's been happening post you, make sure that they're keeping up with the process. And that's not really being, by being intrusive as much as it is you're continuing to monitor a situation of a recommendation that you made, because then you might have to call an audible and say, look, this is really not working as well as we thought. And that's a kind of a fine line, because you don't want to do that to say, it's very easy to look at that and say, well, we're 3 percentage points off the growth rate that we thought we were going to be at. So I'd really like to come back and talk to you and sit down with the team again. So what if I'm a principal, what am I thinking when a consultant says that to me? Don't overthink it. If I just dropped a ton of money to have you tell me how to reorganize my
Tell them that they're crazy.
what, and what are they thinking? What do they think I want? As a consultant, what do they think I want?
The right answers.
Well,
Well, easy answers too, but
And you're being too nice, Hannah. They're thinking, I just paid this person X amount of dollars. Now they want more money to come back to fine tune this. So if I really did my job as a consultant, maybe I can identify that. And maybe instead of saying, hey, I need to come back in and sit down with you guys to figure this out, I can send a nice little 3-bulleted email and say, just in looking at recent data, if we were to add a third machine to assembly, we could pick up another 1,000 units a month. And it would cost us the same logistically to process and package these things. I can do that all via email. How many times, and I think there's a t-shirt on now, I've seen it, that could have been done, and that meeting could have been an email, right? So how many times have we had to sit through a meeting where it could have just been a nice little, 10 bulleted email? But so the follow-up, it's a fine line, because you don't want to be pushy to say, hey, start the meter again, because we're going to get that extra 2% for you guys. Instead, you can say, hey, professional courtesy, this is what I see happening. And I think if you do this, you'll be okay. You'll get back on trajectory. Now, that's the ethical way to do it. You might have a boss in your consulting firm that will say, hey, idiot, get out there because there's an opportunity to reopen that account and let's get back in there and let's make a few more bucks. So the expression I like to throw at that mindset is you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes, where the opportunity for us to do a good deed and help this client who already paid us a significant amount of money to get back on track because we've noticed a variable that we didn't really anticipate. And just give them a friendly little 2-minute nudge. Hey, this is what it'll take to get you back. Will, I think, yield more business for us down the road than it would if we went in there and said, hey, we've got to make this tweak and let me do it. And I can show you, let me talk to the folks involved. I'll show them. And you're just starting the meter and raising the revenue, but getting the billable hours up. It's like when you call a lawyer, right? You call a lawyer, you look down, you're like, all right, I got you for at least 15 minutes because if I hang up right now, you're still going to bill me for 15 minutes, right? So we're conscious of that. We make that call when we're, as a consultant, the meter's running the moment we walk in there. So if the principal might be more inclined to hear us out and be very appreciative of these emails. So when we look to solve for another issue down the road, we're first on his Rolodex or her Rolodex to reach out to tell us that we need your help again. So, and that kind of aligns with Know Your Limits, where you're not in there to save the universe. You're in there to solve for a problem. So you're not going to be going up to, if we go back to Vernon Road, you're not going to be going up to Jeff and say, hey, Jeff, I'm the consultant. You're a jerk. Get out. So even though ethically every one of us would have the right to do that because the guy was a clown, that's not within our purview of why we're there. So you just have to check your authority at the door and be kind of humble behind the scenes, fly in the wall, collect as much data as you can, make your assessment, and keep them in the loop. Any questions on the approach? Comments? Are we good on consulting? You guys have a pretty good handle on it. That's really like the condensed former mod that I was very happy to put into the strategy mod, the strategy semester, because I really think it's valuable. I think it's a very good alternative. And it's a nice, you all come from different walks of life. You all have areas of expertise that you could now take. You could before, but now you're seeing it on paper or on the screen where you could take those areas of expertise and transform them into opportunities where a little side gig or something, but still, it's an opportunity that is radically underutilized in the industry, but I do think is coming back with a vengeance post pandemic. So that's my public service announcement on consulting. So, all right, our week 6 assignment. Try to stay awake when you're finishing up with the Grenier and Cummings and the Auster text. Again, Strugility is much more of it's a livelier book because you can jump around in it. It's not as rigid, but and then our question for the week, for this coming week, is how do external consultants support an organization's ability to create business strategies using resources to validate your position? Consider any pros and cons to using third-party consultants in this process. So essentially, if you were paying attention or for the last 20 minutes, you just answered your discussion board. So and this is just going to look at our writing assignment where we want to have, we're kind of putting you now into the role, or we're moving away from our 2 friends for the time being. So the methodology that focuses on process and content to provide an approach to effectively and efficiently enable organizations to craft achievable and meaningful plans. That little sentence right there sums up everything I want you to leave with this mod. If you leave with that information, this mod, I'm happy. I can go to sleep at night happy knowing that you absorb that, because you can have that as a professional tool for the rest of your career, and long beyond that. You can use it in a personal perspective as well. So your writing assignment is to construct a 2 to 12 page paper, just see if you're paying attention, on which you describe and apply a minimum of 3 key course concepts to your professional career. This is going to vary based on our personal roles and experience in the organizations that we support. It can be organizations you currently support, previously supported, but kind of a light lift, just to show that you've got a handle on how things have come to fruition, or things that you see now come to fruition that were all strategically planned, and how it really works in your particular area of expertise. So any questions on that assignment?
So if we submitted a 12-page paper, would it be a problem? Just asking.
I will grade the first 2, and then we'll look at your references, and assume the other 10 pages are awesome.
Okay.
So you can just go in there and write ASDF JKL semicolon, ASDF JKL semicolon, and just do that for like 10 pages of fluff. But I bet some of you could come up with 12 pages of experiences that you've had, and how it aligns with different plans. I mean, I do think it's possible. The whole point of this, like I said earlier, is to just cut you guys a little slack, keep it in a perspective where I really enjoy when I'm talking to you collectively or individually. I enjoy it when I hear that, oh yeah, you know what, now I've been doing, I understand that, I've applied this, I understand what I'm doing now. So where you understood all along, but now you've got a concept affixed to it, so you can call it something, so this is that kind of 2-pager that's going to not really drain your brain at all. It's going to allow you time to focus on your final, if you got to make any final, touches on that and clean that up a little bit. And it just gives you an opportunity to have, again, maybe a bit of reflection where you can then tie that into some of the situations that you've seen. Because let's face it, regardless of whether it was our first part-time job or our career, or whatever, we've all worked for jerks. There's always been one manager that really, just really, you really didn't click with. But you can kind of go back in time and just take a peek at some of the principles that this bozo violated, and then, again, not a heavy lift, just a little kind of an introspective piece. So yes, Cynthia, 12 pages is a bit long, but you can still submit that if you want. I know you can write 10 of those pages on Howard Schultz and what a jerk he was too.
So Eric, I just have a general question. I know you may not have the answer to this, but why is it that the portfolio papers are like always like in the middle of the class and not like done like for last class? Like, because for me, my aha moments is not like until like not in the beginning or in the middle. It's like usually towards the end is where I get my aha moments. I mean, that's just me. I don't know.
So I know I can't speak for everybody, but in my classes, I made this one quasi in the middle because you've done all the lifting to come up with the strategy. So again, my goal for this class and your portfolio goal is to show that you have mastery in developing a strategic plan, that you can strategically put together a plan in which an organization becomes or maintains a sustainable level. So Now, for me, that's why like your final you're working on from the second week. But this particular paper sums up, okay, I see what they weren't doing internally. I see what they weren't doing externally. These are my strategies. This is what I want to do. And so you submit that paper. Now, when it comes time to put your portfolio together, then you can take your aha moment and tie it in with the assignment. Now in data, it was, I think, my week 6 assignment, or I think it was the 4th of 5 papers. That was the one we were looking at that showed that, or wait a minute, was I earlier this time? But it really isn't designed to say, you conceptually, yes, this is the overview that we're looking, these are the questions we're looking to have you answer. And when you see your portfolio question, you're going to realize that it doesn't ask me to really delve into the outcomes as much as it shows me conceptually, I know what to do. I know how to look at that. I know what I should be looking at. And kind of that's the important piece. Like when we were talking about Bader in the data section, the data class, Bader is kind of the all-encompassing framework that says, okay, you definitely have a handle on this. And we started, I think Bader might have been even a module 3 paper that I moved up, but it was used to be like the 4th or 5th paper that, but again, and Sandy shifted some of the portfolios around the competencies around, and I'm fortunate in the classes that I teach, they're very clear, like the outline. It's easy for me to just yank it right out of the syllabus and put it into basically a word for word assignment, because I also help craft the competency based on what a student with that much knowledge is more than competent when it comes to strategically planning and organizations initiatives. So, but maybe it's different in communications. I'm not 100% sure, because I know your TED Talk is the last thing you do, and I'm not sure if that's what you submit for your portfolio. And I know you've got to do a writing. Did you guys do the British Airways writing model? That shifted a little bit too, where you're taking a submission from, like, I think it's 500 or maybe 510, and then you're reevaluating it in 660 maybe. And then so it really, they're going to be all over the place. So I'm not being evasive in my answer, Cynthia. I just don't think that your aha moment is as important as you think your aha moment is. So I think I've already seen your aha moment. I know that you understand this stuff, but you really, I think you're not going to put your head on the pillow and be happy until I got it all. But you don't need it all. You just need to show that you can do that type of analysis and identify a glaring weakness with an organization, and come up with a solution as to how you're going to correct that. So that's all. But it's also kind of apex too. So when you get to the middle of the semester, a lot of the focus on that second half should be your final in the final project, because that weighs collectively like 40% of your grade. I think it's 40 for your writing, 20 maybe. So I don't know, I've got my syllabus in front of me, but it's really, your focus is more on the final project after you get through that halfway point. We can make it week 1 if you like to, going forward, or week 7. We can just, we'll have a, and I honestly, you know what? I do think now that we're talking about that, I think the 650, I think the paper submitted with the final was the old portfolio piece, or the piece recommended for the portfolio. But again, it was the collection, and you were dealing with like a purely hypothetical outcome, where if you're coming up with just theory right now, that theory, if it started raining 20s tomorrow, your theory would still be intact, but the outcome would be different. If you wait until the 650 paper, the final paper, then your outcome has, basically, it's got the objectives and results tied into it. So you're still in the theory process as we're doing this particular paper right here. And that's really what we want. Again, it's science, it's a science class. We want you guys to have, to develop a theory and defend it. That's all. Any other questions about portfolios? And these are things too that Sandy's a program advisor, so always shoot her an email and say, hey, look, you know, I don't like this outcome, or maybe this outcome is too ambiguous. You guys have a huge voice when it comes to things like that, because you're in the trenches going through it. So never underestimate the power of your voice. All right, let's see. I know we talked a lot about this. What slide am I on? I'm on 15. I think the rest of my slides are all on the final. So what I'd like to do is open it up and have anybody with questions on the final ask, and I'll go to that particular slide. Or we can just kind of hash it out. Any of the concerns or comments or questions that you guys have on the final right now. So fire away. So you're all pros.
I have one, Eric, I'm sorry. Well, not sorry, but I read your PowerPoint yesterday and I'm reading it again. And so, okay, so maybe it's different from what I downloaded. All right, because yours says, so under the first slide, it just says final projects, it says Porter's 5 forces, but on yours, on this one, it says you can do the 4D to SWOT. Okay, I just wanted to confirm. Okay.
So
It's whatever environmental analysis we feel comfortable with or felt comfortable with.
correct. And we talked about, like, if I was to rate them, I would have SWOT 1, I'd have 42, PEST 3, Porter's 4, but you get to that level of redundancy where you're like, all right, we get it, you know. And I know, and there's a couple of other slides that kind of go over the different forms of analysis, but you know, pardon the old metaphor, but I mean, you can beat a dead horse to such a point where, you know, you know what you're looking for. You go with your gut. And I had this conversation with Steven last night. Steven was coming up with all these variables. I'm like, bro, what's your gut tell you? He's like, you know, these guys are clowns and they work horrible with their people. And if you have an engaged workforce, you're going to have a more productive workforce. I'm like, bingo. You don't need to do a pest analysis to understand that. You can do a pest analysis if you really want to support something that you're maybe questioning on your SWOT or your 4D, but it's not essential. These are just variables. These are, you know, like just throwing different chemicals into the mix to see if you want to get the same placebo effect. It's nothing that is like, you've got to do it. So it's what you're comfortable with. It's what you're going to use when you leave here. It's what you're going to use, you without hesitation that you're confident in. I know all of you, we've done SWAT now for 2 semesters, and I intentionally put it in 520 because I knew how significant it was in 650, and you nailed it in 520. So you're pros in it at 650. And again, the 4Ds, SWAT's on steroid. And then you can end up, again, doing the past if you want to look at the external environment and see how politically things are going to fall. If you know, that's a good support for that, but not always necessary. You know? That answer your question, Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a quick other one, but I only can see you. I'm on my iPad, so I don't know if anybody else had another question, so I don't want to jump in.
I don't see any, so you can jump in.
I mean, I didn't know if anybody else was raising their hand. So at the beginning of class, you talked a lot about the income statement and the financials. So you are expecting us to go more in the weeds on that, or at high level? If we came in as consultants and we were talking to the board or the leadership team.
So really, on the income statement, you want to go in, and that's kind of your barometer. So you're looking at their numbers last year. Well, I again, not last year, you're looking at their last income statement. So you can then take those numbers to develop your 30% sales increase. Okay. So now if you're going to get into a manufacturing piece, if you're going to get into, we have to hire 5 people and increase it, you know, add a 3rd shift, and we're going to make X amount of school uniforms next year. You're going to have to look at that, at how it's going to affect your cost of sales. Because if you're adding 5 people, and if you're having like, you know, if you're buying new machines, and if you're increasing labor, that's going to cut down on the, it's going to detract from the cost of these. It's going to take away from the sales revenue that you made based on that cost. So, so at that point, you do have to get in the weeds a little bit, but there's some pretty good links in there to show what some other organizations have done. So you can remain relatively ambiguous, and you can have your estimates be, again, these aren't going to like Price Waterhouse to get confirmed. This is how you would solve for this problem based on the research that you've done. And it could be that in your research, it costs $12 to make a shirt. In somebody else's research, it costs $8 to make a shirt. Doesn't matter. It's how you're going to make that. You're going to make those numbers work to show how you're getting to that 30% gain in sales. So
like, you guys care? I'm just gonna talk a little bit about what we're doing.
Yeah, I was gonna try to go around it, be like, we were gonna hire a spokesperson to be, you know.
So I think, so with the idea of Eric, like bringing in an outside firm to work with performance management and kind of like tap into the internal piece of it, that will come at a cost. So that costs $500. We got a good deal. Like that costs $500 to go through like the training, the leadership, like all that kind of stuff, creating feedback process, like everything. But in turn, it created more productive employees, and we were able to then turn around and get like XYZ. Like I can just make up cost. But showing that, yes, we did invest in bringing in an outside firm, but I can't come up with words, I'm like done, but the turnaround, the reward from it allowed us to reach our 30% sales.
The ROI, Kate, the ROI.
Return on investment, yeah.
The ROI,
Sorry.
Kate, you got it.
I'm like, my wall got hit about 5 minutes ago, so I apologize. But that's what we can do, is like look at those considerations, look at the cost that we had, but this is how we got to the 30%, but we can just make up numbers.
you have to, right?
Okay.
Because we can't, I can't say, you know what, if that's the goal of your specific strategy,
Yeah.
then you go to Joe's consulting company and for management and leadership training, and they have a standard rate of $1,000 per week. This is all stuff that you're blue sky hypothetical. This is what,
Yeah.
you know, if you had the reins to Vernon Road, that's what you would do.
Mhm.
And that's what you're recommending to those two dweebs that run the place. So, and it's all numbers that, you know, obviously if you came in and said, hey, I got a consultant for $1,
Yeah.
then we know that that's probably not a great plan because a consultant for $1 is probably just going to suck. And so if you can, again, make an argument and defend that.
Yeah.
And
So, and just to that, like we have research on, so like those are fake numbers. We're not spending time diving into like what might have really, like a consulting firm really cost. But we have real numbers and research that talks about like how, I forget exactly what it is, but like satisfied employees like produce 20% more. And they have studies on like a group of salespeople who increased profit by 37%. I don't know why I remembered that number, by 37%. Because of like this whole concept of like employee satisfaction and this, and so we can tie those real numbers into the BS numbers of like our $500 consulting firm.
which is perfect. And
Okay.
I'll just to kind of keep that in perspective, right? So let's say that you're the trio, you guys get hired as a consultant for Vernon Road, right? It's your first client. So let's say you're feeling confident, you go in there and say, we're going to charge you $500 a week plus expenses, right? Fair number, right? So now Jerry's going rate is 10 grand a week. So, and Jerry's going to tell him or tell them the same that you're going to tell them, right? So who's to say that a firm going in at $500 or $1,000 a week plus expenses isn't going to have the same outcome?
Yep.
than the 10,000 one. It's just, so it's all, again, it's all in perspective where you're cutting your teeth as consultants, and this is the recommendations you're making for the organization based on your research. So it's just got to be, again, within reasoning. It's got to
Sure.
be something that is, you know, doable and realistic.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. More questions? So I know you're gonna be stressing out about this, right? And I'm probably, I mean, just if you want to text and set up a call, I know I'm gonna be around. I'm on vacation again next week, but I have a couple of meetings like set up, so I'm gonna be back at school on Wednesday, obviously for Wednesday night. But Maria, are you coming down Wednesday?
I will be there,
All right.
ready to party.
Hannah's serving all the drinks.
Right? Hopefully, fingers crossed.
We have Cynthia's gonna bring her house vodka, right? These
In her purse.
Cynthia,
Her
what
purse.
is your new one? You said last week that you found a new one.
Oh, yes, I have to, it's called, oh, I got a picture of it. So see, where is it at? Let's see if you guys can see it.
Eric, I feel like if you let us each bring a beverage in with us,
Look
then
at that
we might do better in these presentations.
That is a very pretty bottle.
I've never seen that, Cynthia, and I
No,
feel
it's
like I'm usually
big.
pretty up to date.
It's
That's not, is that Pink Whitney?
no, it's actually Fagenza Mediterranean fig flavored vodka.
Look at you all
And-
bougie.
And let me tell look, and you know,
It's all
I'm a
healthy with the
rock
fig
girl
flavor.
and whatever else, but and when I first like fig, and I was like, ew, I don't know who wants fig and vodka, right? This drink is so smooth, you don't have to mix it with anything.
Oh,
I
It's
would
like-
try, I
Yeah.
love fig flavored stuff.
Yes,
I
it's-
definitely want to try this.
You can get it. It's at your local Total Wine. I don't know about in your area, but I know
We don't
it's
have
here.
Total Wine.
Yeah, so
What's it called, Cynthia? What's it called?
it's called fig,
I'm just gonna
Figenza?
Google fig
It-
vodka.
Yeah, it's Figenza Mediterranean. So it's
Found it.
Figenza. And I tell you something else that is good. And I don't like those Trulies, but you know how Kettle One has those organic, the organic vodka? Well, they have them like, I guess, like in the spritzers or whatever, like the Trulies. Those are good too. Yes. Yep.
I'm gonna look into all of this. We all need alcohol during the holidays, right? That's how we make it through.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, in the parking lot, I don't know.
So this is,
Eric is like so concerned for our health and well-being. He's like, this class got some real problems.
Yeah, he's going, oh, if I only talked about vodka sooner, they'd all start chiming in.
That's what I did. Well, see, he asked. All he had to do was ask, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I'll have to see if the caterers have it on Wednesday. I'll ask them, like,
You
what
know
are you
what, you-
serving?
You may have to make a special request, but like, look, we have a special guest, and they prefer this, right? This is
Oh my
what
God.
guests.
Are you the special guest?
Well, they don't have to know that. I mean,
It could be one of my high-end, listen, it's in a few months, you're all alumni, so you become part of our donor base.
exactly.
Just
So
know
I'm
that.
I'm a future alumni. There we go.
You
Yeah.
are, Cynthia, you are. We have to make sure our future alum are happy.
Yes, that, again, I make this, I can help out with the suggestions, and when it comes to vodka, all that stuff.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Hey, I have a son at the school over at CTRA. I'm trying to get the next one over there. So, yeah,
Perfect.
yes. Yeah. So
Cynthia's who I want. Cynthia's who I want in my base.
so will that, and by the way, this is probably collectively the last time we'll be able to reference Maria's Fine Wines.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Sad.
I
Pour
do,
one out, Cynthia, pour one out.
pour one out. But you know what? This is probably something you may want to think about, Eric, that, maybe we should do this as a suggestion in last class. Like, do case studies. Like, again, you see how all excited we got with vodka and wine?
the sad thing is, Cynthia, I get as excited talking about Vernon Road as you do on, so.
That's one of the best things about you, Eric. You're so passionate about what you talk about.
Yes,
Even
it is.
Yeah.
But so let's go in our time machine for a second, right? So where would we put this Figenza? Where would we put it in Maria's Fine Wines? What part of the store we put that in?
As soon as you walk in, right?
I think you might have to
Oh,
do
no.
in the back.
In the
next to
back, yeah.
something super popular, because then somebody will go for
Yeah.
Tito's and then be like, oh, what's this interesting thing?
And the bottle's
maybe-
so pretty.
It
and
is.
then there's like maybe a nice sale on it. So you're like, well, I'm here, I might as well grab it.
Can you do liquor samples? I know you do wine.
They
I don't think
do.
you can.
Well,
They
they
do?
do at Total Wine, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's what you
does.
should do too.
Hey,
Huh?
do you go to Sammy's? He does.
I've never been there when I do go there all the time. I've never been there when they've done samples though. I only ever see wine samples. That's all.
No,
I've
he'll,
ever
if you
been
if you
like.
ask, he'll open a bottle for you. He and his wife will open a bottle for you for
Oh.
anything.
Do you
Yeah,
guys
they
think
do.
Annan is just laughing at us from behind a screen?
He's probably just like,
Guaranteed.
these people
You'd be
stop
surprised.
talking.
I'm just taking
I
notes.
just see Eric's screen because he's still sharing. So on my iPad, I just hear your voices and see Eric's slide that says final team project assignment. That's all I have right now.
So-
There you all are. All
So
I
the-
see is the slide and I hear your voices talking about this.
Yeah. So I don't know, like since the pandemic, they've stopped doing it, but they do liquor. They do actually, I don't like eggnog, but that Christmas before the pandemic, their eggnog vodka, they had like this, that was really good. Yes. And I don't like eggnog,
Yeah.
but they had this drink during the holiday and it's an eggnog, whatever. It's like eggnog with vodka and I think it's like 7 liquor in it. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Hardcore.
If I'm around someone I really don't want to be with on the Christmas holidays, this would get me right? So,
Exactly it.
Or if you have a final presentation in a week.
Yeah. Same
well,
thing.
considering that I have to present this, if I was really presenting to the chaplains, I will probably be drinking that eggnog, right? and giving it to Jeff and telling him to loosen up a bit. But but yeah, Total Wine, like I said, I don't know since the pandemic, I don't know. But this is one thing that I've learned about Total Wine, and this is one of the reasons why like Connecticut irks me. Total Wine up here does not give you reward points. Total Wine in Maryland, in the DC area, you earn reward points.
Really?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh.
That's another part of the strategy, see?
It's another data
Yeah.
collection, another
Member
data piece.
loyalty
But
program.
the Total Wine up here does not do
No,
it. They don't have-
definitely doesn't.
but down and so like when I go visit family like during the summer and holidays, I have a membership. I have like the rewards membership down there. And trust me, by the end of the week, I have earned points. You know. So it's like, yeah. So yeah,
We
but
gotta take our small wins.
yeah. So unfortunately, Total Wine isn't here with that. I did mention it to them, like, hey, you guys should consider this. I am a frequent flyer here.
Are they all affiliated? Like, are they all the same owner?
You know what? I'm not sure. I guess I have, you know what? That's a good project, Eric. I'd have to look that up.
We're all 18 or 21 plus.
Yeah, we're all 20, but I have to look. I'm not sure, but I just know like here they don't do that. But yeah, I know like in Maryland and DC, they do. They offer reward. And I like rewards. I like money. I like a return on my investment, right? Good wine, spend my money, and I get like $10, $15 back to spend on more alcohol.
I call that sale math in my house. That's like sale math. Like, I'm like, that's just, it's free money in my mind.
Okay,
But-
but wait, now remember, so if they have the loyalty, what are they also doing?
They're getting renewed business.
Yeah,
Right?
Collecting all your data.
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's, yeah, if you're in a points program.
Oh, Maria, how quickly you forgot, Maria.
I know.
So I have a question about that because I actually got in a debate with someone about this. So they were trying to convince me to move from Android over to Apple. And they were adamant that because of Apple security, that they're unable to sell your data. Because
Well, you can opt out of them sharing, but it limits access to certain things that you actually can do the same thing with an Android, and you can opt out of when you get an app if you want to share that information. So, but Apple now actually has it in their iOS 14 maybe that shows it as like one of their intro screens where when after you've uploaded the latest version, you can then ask them not to share your data. So then each app that you have that you are sharing data in, you're gonna have to go back in and then modify the settings for it.
okay, yeah, because they got in this big argument, like, yeah, and I'm like, no. I was like, I just took a data class. That don't sound right, you know? But they made it seem like it was just specific to Apple and that, yeah, I got to switch to an iPhone so I can protect my data and da-da-da-da-da. And because Apple doesn't sell your data and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no, not unless you pay for it.
Look, I have an iPhone and I could right now, I will tell you that I can ask how much the couches cost. And on my feed, right? I will start seeing feeds from Bob's Furniture, from Kavanaugh Furniture, from
Eric, do a search on movers in Southern Maine, and then you can just send me all the information.
Southern Maine. Are you staying in Southern Maine?
Well, I'm just going right over the border in New Hampshire, but it's like 35 minutes, so it's not far.
So you'll be closer to Massholia then.
I mean, I will, and I do go to Mass often because of all my family's there, so.
Well, you just couldn't make the plunge completely, right? You just wanted to keep that buffer distance up there.
Oh, I lived in Massachusetts for a good 15 years. I'm good forever. It's too much.
What is the for the non-New Hampshireites? What is the what does it say on the license plate? What is the credo for the state?
Live free or die.
Yes. Or you can do the Bruce Willis version, live free or die hard. So Cynthia, Maria, how much are you gonna save in taxes?
Pretty penny, probably like $5,000 a year plus.
Nice. Yeah, New Hampshire is a very attractive landing point for, I wouldn't mind ending up there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole diatribe I can go on after house searching and learning more than I ever cared to know. They say the property taxes are a lot more, but I don't really think that they are necessarily. So you are getting a whole break on your income tax and maybe spending a little bit extra on property taxes. Worth it. But no, don't everyone move to New Hampshire, because then that's going to make the housing market even more difficult than it already is. So
I won't. I like my little town.
What, how about, do you have excise tax over there now in New Hampshire?
I don't know. Because I don't live there yet, I don't know, but I will find out.
Way to research it, Maria.
Yeah. At this point, I do not have enough hours in the day for that. So that'll be a future problem, future challenge.
That's a big time hit in Massachusetts, is the excise tax. You know?
Yeah. I have it in Maine, but I just don't know about New Hampshire.
We're seeing that we're like way off track, but do we have any other questions on the final? Otherwise, we can cut it and you guys can go to work on your.
I just want to make sure I understand, like, I just want to make sure timing. I just read your paper. So discussion post due. And then Tuesday is this paper. And then the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday we present, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And you're done.
And we get a break.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Then I'm pretty sure starting in January, you go to a straight 7-week mod now. So
Oh,
you don't have that extra week. So that'll be, you get kind of a faculty and students get a prep week for the mod, and then you jump into it. So so you never have to worry about that, because the way your class on a Wednesday, you're right at the break of the mod, you know? So you're like the mod ends, or the mod ends Tuesday and starts is it Tuesday to Wednesday or Wednesday to Thursday? Either way, you guys are right on the break. So that'll be gone now. So your class will start on a Monday. I'm sure the due dates will change. Seeing that you're in your routine to get everything done by 11:59 on Tuesday night now. But I'm around. So if you guys have questions or you want to work something out, just let me know.
wait, were you saying like the day of our class isn't changing?
No, the day's not your due,
Oh,
because your due date will probably end up being, the class will open on a Sunday, or the class will end on a Sunday night now versus end on a Tuesday night when the semester ends. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like our last class would be next Wednesday. Your class would end that week. You wouldn't have to go into the next week. So you wouldn't have that.
gotcha.
It just makes everything uniform.
Yeah.
Like when I post grades now, I have to have my grades in on the 19th.
Oh.
But anybody that has a class on Friday basically has to then wrap everything up on Saturday and get their grades in on Sunday. So it's supposed to give the students a little more flexibility, and it gives the faculty more time to get like grades in and so forth, to clean it up a little bit. Takes that extra week out. So that was kind of like my haphazard explanation of why we're going to do 7-week mods. So is it snowing where you guys are?
Yeah. My car's like covered.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out and look.
I have absolutely no idea.
Oh, well, of course. And
Probably look out the window, right? At some
probably
point.
got a foot.
Yeah, it's snowing. The cars are covered. It's snowing. Yeah.
I gotta check in Maine now. I feel like this is all part of the,
Are you snowing?
I don't think it's snowing, but there is snow on the ground.
Oh,
That's standard though. Don't you guys have snow year round up there on the ground?
Even in July.
I mean, it's, yeah. Although I was obviously working in New Hampshire today and it snowed a bit, but it didn't stick. And as I got to Maine, literally across the border, there was like inches of snow on the ground. I don't know how it could be that drastically different, but
it's crazy.
It's the Mason.
All right,
Dixon.
thanks. Thanks, Eric. Have a good night.
All right, well, thank you. Appreciate the flexibility of being online because I think I don't think anybody except Kate was going to be there tonight.
Yeah, that's okay.
And plus you don't have to drive in this garbage now too on the way home. So
Mm.
My 4-minute ride home, yes.
all right, don't brag. Don't brag, Kate.
So close.
I'm so jealous.
my ride home today, I left school at 4:50, so I could be sure I was logged in by 5:55-ish here. And it took me over an hour to get home.
Oh,
It wasn't even snowing. It was just traffic was just really slow because of the rain and the mist.
yeah,
You know?
that's annoying.
I guess you can gloat with that 4-minute ride, but
Yeah.
all right. So I'll post this tomorrow. If you guys want to research it, and then I actually probably out of tonight, but just let me know if you have any questions working on your final, and I'm available and we can chat, and I'm off again. If you need to like meet during the day, Monday, Tuesday next week, if you need to talk, like I'm available. So I'm like available all day. I don't have my day job next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, you're
Bye.
welcome.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
Have a good night.